Imagine capturing a scene with a lens that has seen decades and decades of history. Lenses that have such character that's so rich, it almost breathes life into every single frame. Today we're diving into the magic of vintage lenses, surprise, with Sam Ebdon, a filmmaker who's not just using these old lenses, but he's bringing them back to life through rehousing. So we're going to be talking a lot about this right here. From cinematic stories that he's told inspired by The Revenant and based on his own life experience to the value and the personality in each piece of glass, Sam shares his journey of crafting unforgettable visuals on a budget. And he's an awesome director. We're going to talk about why vintage lenses might be every filmmaker's secret weapon. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. We did an interview together a couple months ago, and specifically this conversation is going to be directed toward CineHousing and vintage lens conversion because Sam and I are both into that realm, into that world. And Sam has had a lot more experience since then, so I'm excited to jump into it with you. But first and foremost, I mean, tell me how you got into film. Like what brought you into this world?
So I actually realized this the other day, and it's really bizarre. I basically started making films when I was 5, and that kind of came off the bat of running around with my dad's SLR then, which then obviously then became digital as well. So it was like the last days of film coming into the early like DSLR phases. And I love taking photos and all that sort of thing. But I quickly realized that one of the actual reasons why I love film as much as I do is because when I think I was 6 or 7, I went to SeaWorld in Florida, and they had this. So not obviously there's a lot of controversy surrounding SeaWorld now, and don't condone it.
What? There is? We have a lot to talk about.
But before you see the killer whale show, they show this beautiful like film, and as like this 6-year-old little boy, I was so moved by it, and I was like, I want to make something like that. That's amazing. And then I think that has actually trickled into kind of like where like helped to drive that sort of thing, is to create that kind of impact for different people. But yeah, since then it's just been an absolute love for it. I love making films. I live and breathe it. I don't have a day where I don't think about it. Yeah, and then quickly transitioned into directing and cinematography as my main kind of like career path. So I've done everything from commercials to feature films and lots of like a bulk load of short films as well. And the ones on the lenses that we're going to be talking about today, we did a Revenant style one. It's called Blurred, which is about the founding of Bath in the UK. And I've shot 2 of my own films on the lenses as well, so both Not Bad and Strangers. So yeah, that's kind of the breadth of everything. Obviously you can see my portfolio and stuff, I'm sure, at some point too. And yeah,
appreciate you sharing your story. Do you have like a Shamu tattoo? Like, come on.
No, so ironically,
not yet.
That tattoo. Is yeah, that's the plan. I'm booked in to get to, like, I got my first one 4 or 5 weeks ago now. So I've got some mountains because, you know, love adventure, but I'm getting my great grandfather's boat on my arm, and then like a little spaceman up above. And then after that, it's kind of like going to go, it's like patchwork, but with themes. So one bit's like land, sea, and then space, and then it kind of like goes up. So at one point there will be a killer whale there. I just haven't put that one in just yet.
Please, that would be perfect. All right, so you touched a little bit on some of the films that you've worked on. Our first conversation, you had just wrapped one of your films, and it sounds like you've done another one. Can you give us like a brief summary of those stories, why you chose to tell them, your role on them, and just take it however you want.
So Not Bad, which is the first one that we did kind of like with these lenses, it's a romance drama based on 2 people that had a high level of feelings for each other, and they kind of like had this 1 month like romance, and then quickly then had to go 2 separate ways. So then they rekindle that romance. It's kind of like just about that first night back together, the conversations that you'd have when seeing this person that you haven't seen for 9 months after kind of like a whirling romance to just nothing all of a sudden.
You sure you're okay?
Yeah, just tired. Got a long day ahead.
Well, I'm around again Thursday if you fancied.
You just have to be a last minute thing. Yeah, good at those.
So it's a very, very interesting story, kind of like very thought-provoking, best way to put it. But yeah, it's a beautiful little bit. I directed it personally, so wrote and directed that one. And then the next project is Blurred, which I was the cinematographer on. So the director had approached me 2 years ago asking for me to DP it basically. And I was like, sweet, yeah, I would love to, because it's like, I've always loved The Revenant. And I was like, I really want to try and have a go at doing a bit of like this Emmanuel Lubezki kind of vibe, get the wides out or whatnot, and just play with some nitty gritty kind of like natural light and using lots of negative fill and just finding like a nice balance between it all. And it's quite a fun little piece. It's very drama centric. There's not a lot of dialogue, so a lot of it did have to be told visually, and obviously shooting outside the whole time where you've got no power and all that sort of thing. You had to get quite creative with where we're putting lights, how we're using lights. Everything was kind of running off of battery, and yeah, and then obviously it comes down to lenses and look, and the NIKKORs did the best job because they just added this like gritty feeling that you just don't really get with a lot of lenses. Obviously you can get the Helios and the Russian ones, but they come sometimes at a price tag when you want to get them rehoused and all that sort of thing. So, and the NIKKOR set I already had and I love, so I chose those.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Blair Dead. Strangers, so that's my current one. It's currently a work in progress. We are moving into composing now, so it should be out by the end of September. That's basically more of a rom-com drama about kind of like modern dating. Basically, we're talking about Hinge and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's Linge is the dating app that they use. But it's basically two people meet through that, and it's about that kind of like that first bit where maybe some people aren't too sure on what they actually want. So yeah, it's an interesting way of playing with it all, but then it focuses on kind of like your friends always being there for you and having these conversations of vulnerability, especially between men, because I feel like a lot of your romances are focused on the other side, which is absolutely fine. But sometimes it's nice to show that, you know, guys, we can talk to each other about this sort of stuff.
Still talking about Prim?
Yeah. Doesn't make sense to me either, mate. Just seems to be what people are like these days.
It seems to be a reoccurrence for me. It feels like I went out of my way for something that just got thrown away like that.
I think there's something romantic about waiting for somebody. Even if you shouldn't have waited for them in the first place, you tried. It tells more about your character and who you are than what ends up happening.
And not have that kind of negative thought on top of it of like, oh, you're just being a wuss or whatnot. It's like actually talking about these emotions and going, this doesn't feel right and this is why. And I think it will also open up that question to everybody else on the latter, especially in this world of dating where it is very much just your match on there, but everybody knows that in 5 minutes time I could go back on and I could find and swipe to the next person and all that sort of thing. So it's always a lot of people are just looking for replacements all the time instead of just, I don't know, letting love come to them. Yeah, so they're the three.
Dude, we have so much to talk about then. Like I can think of more episodes just based on the premises of your films. Seriously. I remember seeing The Revenant. I think it might have been for the first time. The theater was full, and so I had to sit in the front row, and you know, your neck is craned way up and all of that. But it was the coolest experience I've ever had in a theater because the entire screen, like my entire field of view was taken up by, you know, especially someone like Emmanuel Lubezki's cinematography of him just ripping through like super low across the river, through the trees, the color grade, the story. It was amazing. So to see that you guys pulled that, like a ton of inspiration from that and made a film from it, dude, I can't wait to see it. Tell me a little bit about why you chose the NIKKORs. So a little bit of background. CineHousing is the company that we have both partnered with to rehouse some of our lenses. Sam and I both love the NIKKOR AI-S line. There's something intangible about it, incredibly vintage about it. I'm sure we'll get into it, but why did you choose the Nikon AI-S series for your films?
So I have always been kind of like infatuated with obviously vintage lenses and those sorts of things because A, it's cheaper, so you can just pick them up, you can buy them, whack them on your camera, and you're kind of like good to go.
Yes.
I've always been in that aspect of I don't really care for autofocus because my filmmaking is more narrative based, and you kind of need manual focus really for full control over what you're doing in those situations. And it also helps you think a bit more about the image you're trying to create. So that's kind of like one aspect of why you should go into that vintage side. But the reason I went for the NIKKORs, and I think I did stumble across a video that you had also made yourself at some point, I believe, when I was looking and doing all the research into it. But I absolutely love the look of Lomo super speeds. Like, wide open, they have this beautiful little ring around the bokeh, and always just feels slightly distorted. But Lomo super speeds, if you know, are quite pricey and all that sort of thing. 'Cause they are, I believe, they're also like little vintage pieces, but then they've been professionally like rehoused, full metal thing, and come in at ridiculous prices just to get them. Even renting is crazy. But I found after testing a few different lenses, the Nikons have a very similar like rolled off look and feel, and the bokeh looks very, very similar to what the Lomos look like. And I was like, that's quite interesting. But then the other issue comes with is if you buy just a set of Nikon primes, you're then looking at them going, oh, well, if I put this on a camera, I then put a clamp on matte box on the front, or I want to put something in front or put a follow focus gear onto it, it's not really going to suit it very well. So then that's where the rehousing comes in and then creates a full sleeve that is really quite solid and can actually do the job for your more professional work. You've got to be careful with them, like any lenses, and treat them with respect, but they do and go the full blast. Like we've used them on 3 shorts and a commercial now, and it's absolutely fine. But yeah, Nikon wise, I just love the image of it, the look it gives, the feel, the character. Each lens has its own kind of like little personality, which is really nice, but they all match up really well as well. And I guess that's part of that AI-S line, is to keep it all cohesive together as a set. But between my 24 to 50, so I got 24, 35 and a 50, and you're looking at me through the other camera, that's on a 50mm at the moment. But yeah, it's just beautiful, looks amazing, all that sort of stuff. Could not be happier with kind of like a look for how my images can go. They've also got a high amount of contrast as well, so you can really have like a nice difference in your images, and the fall off and roll off is really nice too. So yeah, I could go on forever about it basically.
Yeah. I'm curious, when did you first discover that you could mount vintage photo lenses onto your cinema camera? For me, I think it was like maybe 5 years ago. I was at a vintage camera store and I realized I could adapt a Nikon F to EF, and I had my Blackmagic in. I just didn't expect to have this moment of realization that I'm looking at this glass cabinet full of photo lenses being like, holy smokes, I have a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? I cannot wait to dive into finding and figuring out like the characteristics of some of these lenses, and you know how they differ from the more modern equivalents. Because like you're saying, a lot of people are buying these modern lenses that have autofocus, they have IBIS, they have, you know, the 70 to 200 has like 4 or 5 different knob settings on it. You know what I mean? But for cinema, you just really don't need it. So I'm curious, going way, way back, how did you initially figure out that you could do this with vintage glass?
I think I was 17 or 18, and I had found an eBay listing basically of a set. Well, it was a 58mm Helios that had been adapted at the back, so it had the anamorphic bokeh thing from Iron Glass themselves. So that's when they had like started up. So they weren't even doing the rehousing yet. They were just putting cine gears on, putting an EF to M42 screw adapter on, and then that would be how you buy the lens. And I spotted it on eBay, and I was like, "Ooh, that's quite interesting. It's not too expensive," because I was there looking at like, I'd quite like to get another lens. Don't really know what to get. Didn't have a lot of money either, like at 17, so had like that little kind of job, and I was doing different little film bits here and there, but didn't have a full pocket as per se. And yeah, so the 58mm Helios, and I ordered it on like a whim. I was like, this might not fit, and I could have wasted 200 quid on it, and that might be it, and I'm gonna be really annoyed. But it turned up. I put it on my camera. I also couldn't, at that point, I couldn't get into my head that the anamorphic adapter at the back, so they just put like an oval thing in over the iris at the back of the lens. So it'll give you oval bokeh as though it is anamorphic, but it's not actually, you're not filming in an anamorphic setting. It's still using the 16:9. But then that got me into that kind of thing of like, well, if that one can do it, then what does it actually look like bare bones, or just like the lens itself? So then I ended up getting a 35mm chin-on for like £35 and an M42 to EF screw adapter. And I was like, okay, right. So now I've got a 35mm vintage lens. I've got my 58. And then all of a sudden I started collecting these like little vintage lenses because they all just had lovely character. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's another lens with another focal length. So that was an extra thing in my arsenal to be like, okay, right, I can then change to this, and it's still a prime, so I've got more control over it and all that sort of thing. But like as it went, I started to realize that a lot of this is very, very good glass for ridiculously cheap prices that you would never think, especially in today's day and age. Everything like zooms wise, you're paying £800 for just like a bog standard 24 to 105mm or whatnot from whoever, depending on what camera you're filming on. And it's just that price is ridiculous. Whereas you could literally buy a full set of Nikon prime lenses. They have gone up, but you could buy a full set for 500 quid. And so you could get a full set of primes, 24, 35 and 50 for 300 quid less than a zoom lens from whoever, so Sony or Sigma or whatnot. And yeah, so both saving money, but also the glass is incredible. They all have their quirks and qualities, and a lot of the time you can also find them to like suit you as a filmmaker too. So depending on what your style is or what kind of looks you're trying to achieve. So if you do more commercial work that's more clinical, you can definitely find the sharper vintage glass. Or if you're doing the more narrative work that needs feeling and emotion, then you can go into that route of testing different things like the Helios or the NIKKORs or whatnot and just experiment with everything. But yeah, it's the massive bubble that kind of like is a very fun discovery to make, especially when you realize that it can save you a bit of cash as well.
One of the biggest things for young filmmakers is, you learn the basics, you learn, the shutter speeds, you learn ISO, you learn aperture, you learn what focal lengths are more appealing on human faces. You just kind of learn the technical part. I would argue the most fun part, and I would love to hear your opinion on this, but it's like developing your style. It's you shooting over and over and over again, and then you see these themes. You see these themes pop out in your work, and it's like, I didn't know that was my style, but I guess it is. And you keep leaning into that. And a part of that is finding lenses that just really speak to like what you're trying to communicate. And what's cool, what you're saying, Sam, is, if you're looking for a clinical look, you can get, you can close it down to 5.6 or 4 where it's really sharp and, there's not a ton of character. Or you can open it up to 1.2 where, chromatic aberration city, but at the same time, it's going to create an image that is like, it's hard to put your finger on, like, why does this feel so nice? Why does this feel so cool to look at? But I would say that for younger filmmakers, it is like absolutely critical to be able to save a ton of money and also lean into a lens set that, I mean, Sam, you're shooting features, you're shooting, documentaries and things on these lenses. They should not be overlooked. And the thing is, if we're talking about it, the odds are the prices are going to go up on these lenses because more people are going to be looking for them. So it's kind of like, I don't want to talk about it, so the prices stay low. But at the same time, I have to talk about it because it's really changed my perspective on filmmaking entirely up to this point. So transitioning from all of that, dude, talk about collecting. I just got a ton.
Yeah, I've got my two NIKKOR. I've got my 24 and 35.
Oh, that's sick. So one of the reasons that you would go for a rehousing of these lenses is because, this is how they come. They're pretty small. You can get them adapted to cinema. So you can put a focus ring on here. You can put the same filter thread on here with parts from Duclos, from Follow Focus Gears, from all these other companies. They make parts to adapt them, which makes them really easy to use for cinema because you declick the aperture, it becomes a smooth aperture. You put, focus rings on so your follow focus can grab on there. And then you put outer diameter rings on there so you can have the same filter thread size and put matte boxes on there. So you can do that. But what we're going to be talking about today is something completely different. So the lens is just inside of here. And if we're talking from a pure investment standpoint, lenses are awesome because they don't really, some do, but they don't really lose their value very quickly. So even from a pure investment standpoint, you putting your lens inside of a rehousing like this, regardless of how this functions, might actually protect it for the long haul if you're trying to eventually sell them. So I think there's a lot of different angles we can come at this with. But Sam, how did you hear about CineHousing for the first time?
So I spotted, once again, it's from eBay. So I am a bit of an eBay, purchase artist. I can find all of the little nitty gritty bargains that are jumping around that site. But I kept on looking at kind of like getting looking at rehousing and all that sort of stuff, but on the latter, so going to like not Iron Glass, but there's another place in the UK not too far from where I am now. Can't actually remember the name of them, but they charge almost $4,500 per lens just to rehouse it. And obviously you get a full metal coat. $4,500 per lens is quite a lot. Like you're talking almost like mortgage prices as a person just doing your own thing. After you do a set of lenses, you could also buy a house. So if you've got priorities, I would always say...
Do I buy a house or do I...
do I buy a house or do I rehouse my lenses? And kind of like it's a... that would be a losing battle because you may as well just get a house. So I was always interested in doing it, but obviously it just costed a lot. And then I was trawling through eBay at one point and I was just looking at kind of like, the odd 58mm Helios, and I was going, maybe I should just get another one or treat myself. And sadly they've gone up in price as well. They used to be about £35, now they're about 60. So people are getting wind that a lot of people like these lenses. So if we can gatekeep it as much as possible, then I would recommend it, but also don't, because obviously everybody needs
we
to be
are to blame here, but please, if you're hearing this, keep it a secret.
Buy
your
it,
friends,
share the video, but
don't.
just don't implore it. But so I was then trolling at eBay, and then I found that you could buy a 58mm Helios, but rehoused in this 3D printed plastic housing. I was like, that's very interesting. And I had also previously done a 3D printed housing myself and rehoused a Helios, but I didn't do it properly, not to the extent that these are done. And it was kind of rough around the edges. It was nice and it worked, but I never kind of went, walk on set with that and be happy with it, because it was just so roughly done by myself. So I then saw the housing and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Then found the Instagram for CineHousing, because I like to do everything via Instagram, because then when I'm reaching out, I can then also talk about other things maybe we can use these lenses on a latter and other business stuff. But also it helps them, I think, know who their customer is, because it's quite handy to then go, okay, right, if I'm asking for you to rehouse a set of lenses, I'm going to definitely have some questions on how bad are they going to wear and all that sort of thing. And I had questions like that I just wanted to ask. But it's basically from finding it on eBay and then a whole Instagram conversation. By the end of it, I was like, right, I'm ordering 3 Nikons. I'm going to pull the plug and I'm going to do it. Not Nikons, NIKKORs. And then, here I am.
I love it. What was your experience interacting with, I think his name is Mihai. I don't want to butcher that, but what was your experience just as a customer dealing with CineHousing, dealing with Mihai? Because he's the solo owner of CineHousing, and he's been doing it all himself, which is congrats to you, man. I'll tell real quick just about my experience. It was extremely positive, and he has been so patient. He did this lens conversion for me for free. He wanted me to talk about it. He wanted me to review it. And I can't say enough how awesome it is to talk to someone who is doing something like this in the industry, which is a really cool tool for filmmakers. And for him to be as collaborative as he is and not trying to force something one way or the other. He's really just really curious about how he can improve his own product. And I think that trait alone is worth, it's invaluable. It really is. So, not to steal the thunder, but how was your experience with Mihai?
Yeah, so pretty equal to the same, from basic communication of kind of like when I was buying the lenses, I was like, these are the ones, and he kind of like reassured me on the different things and what to do and what not to do. So got all the lenses together, shipped them off to him. He received them. He got them all taken apart, cleaned them all, so they're all fully done and sorted, and that was like perfect. And then it is a long wait time. Obviously, it's one person doing it, and then he'll send it off to his tech guy to go and clean the lenses as well. So you have to have patience with that, but obviously it's quite a piece of art that you end up getting back. And I was very lucky because at the time I was living in London, so he had actually hand delivered them to me, so I got to open them up in front of him, which is really nice, and kind of like just look at it and run through everything. And that was really, it was quite heartwarming, because you never really get, oh, I'd like to hand deliver it to you, not whack it in a post box and come and drop it off. Obviously, I think for you, Collin, it might have been a bit tricky because it would have costed a flight over and all that. Got them hand delivered to me, and then we've just been in touch since, because I've used them on all the projects and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite handy, I think, for him to have the lenses being put to use that he's rehoused, and to show that on kind of like his portfolio of what the lenses can go on and do. And I met up with him at the BSC Expo as well, just bumped into him this year in Feb. And that was really nice. We just had a nice little catch up, and we spoke about Blair Dead, which is the film that the Revenant one, and just spoke about kind of like how they worked on that and all that sort of thing. And that was really nice. Like, just the overall quality of everything that he's put into the lenses themselves. I think there's so much love for it. He loves the Nikons as well, which is really nice. So it was quite a nice little thing where I think for him, he was rehousing a set that he absolutely loved. And yeah, just love and care into it is brilliant. And all the other ones, even from the Helios ones that he's done, just look incredible. Like, they all come out and kind of like look stunning. I've got these are two. I've got the 24 and 35 in front of me, and then you're looking at me through the 50. But they're just gorgeous, and yeah, I cannot recommend enough.
That's sweet, man. And yours have your company name. I mean, obviously it's Ebdon Film, or is it Sam Ebdon Film? Perfect. Dude, that is so sick. I wish I would have given my company name, because the coolest thing about that is if you sell those, if you move those, there will only be one set of the Ebdon NIKKOR, or Nikon NIKKOR AI-S, whatever you want to call it. Like, that is so dope.
Clients can kind of be like, oh, that's like, these lenses are custom to Ebdon, or like if I brought them on set, then like I could put them on any camera. So not just like my BS1H, I could go put it on an ARRI, and it's kind of like it sets that in stone. So I've always got a good photo op for the Ebdon side of things, but it always just brings that and carries that name around. And sometimes other DPs are using it if I'm directing, so it means that I can still take a photo of it, and they'll be taking a photo of it and posting it on social media and all that sort of stuff. So they're quite like little novelty items that you can kind of pick up and see. And the other thing, when you put your name on it, it does kind of like change how, if I was to resell later, it could change that kind of like value slightly, because obviously they are personalized. But on the latter, it's then, 10 years time, I don't know how far I could have gone. If I've gone to that point, then they could be novelty items that everybody wants because they're Ebdon lenses. But for now, I'm kind of hoping that at some point Mihai will say, oh, I'm doing full metal rehousing, and I can go back to him and send these back and then get a full metal jacket done and like brought back in with the same ones. So that would be amazing. But for now, this is perfect as it is. So completely just changes the game and changes how you can use these lenses as well, which is lovely.
Tell me, what was your experience on set with the Nikon NIKKOR's Rehoused? What made the difference? Like, what did kind of having these rehoused lenses unlock for you on set?
I think that, so the first thing is usability. All of them have the same outer diameter, so we can put the matte box straight on. There's no fiddling or unscrewing one outer diameter adapter from one lens and putting it on the next. So that's the first thing. It just makes like the AC's lives a lot easier. And then I think the second thing as well is just having the teeth, but the proper broad spectrum, because you've got such a long like throw from one side to the other now. So it just adds a little bit more length on the barrel. They've got a bit more throw to play with, so they can go for longer or be a bit more kind of like accurate on little bits. Overall though, like lenses worked absolutely fine. You've got to be light and careful with them. Mine have like chipped slightly, but I call them little wear marks, so everything's going to do it at some point. Paint's going to come off, but it's not an easy, not a hard fix. It's just a bit of lacquer that just has to go back on, so it's a nice, easy little thing. But yeah, apart from that, they've done an amazing job. And because he's like re-greased them as well, it means that for different weather scenarios, and when we were using them on Blurred, we were filming at like in 1 degree Celsius kind of weather as the sun was rising and the lenses were still moving, and that's quite an important thing because sometimes the grease inside could freeze up. Most of the time they shouldn't, but depending on which lenses you've got, sometimes it can and cause a bit of issue there. But luckily these guys are absolutely fine, and because they've had that care put into them during the kind of like assembly process of being rehoused or re-sleeved in this kind of case, they've been properly done and can kind of like stand for time. So yeah, really nice. I've absolutely loved them. I feel like all I'm saying is praise, but they are brilliant. So stamp of approval.
It's one thing that I've seen recently, especially on YouTube. You probably have seen this too. I'm not going to name the YouTuber who did this, but I saw a video of, he said, the 7 best vintage lenses you have to own, all caps. And I watched it, and it was 10 minutes of B-roll of his Airbnb. And it was him unboxing the lenses for the very first time in the video. And it seems like the internet is full of a little bit of that, where it's people, using some gear for an hour, and then here's all of my thoughts from usage of this. And it's hard to believe. It's hard to trust because you haven't been in real world scenarios, right? And if you're actually out on film sets, things are going to go wrong and things are going to go right. And I don't think that's something that you can figure out in a day. So to hear your perspective on, shooting very long narrative pieces with these, and the fact that they've held up is, to sing its praise a little bit louder. It's a really, really awesome housing that he's figured out how to do and to modify this way. And the coolest thing is it keeps improving. So the one that I have on the outer ring, there was a jut out here, and now that the outer ring is metal, it used to be plastic, we collaborated over Instagram on how to take away that edge so that you could fit a matte box flush to it. So he's even open to feedback from filmmakers on how to improve the design as well, which, I mean, again, that's hard. If you talk to like Aperture and give feedback, it'll probably get, dumped into a folder somewhere in spam. But for Mihai, it's like, he wants to make it as good as he can. To get that stamp of approval from someone who's actually used them on set is just critical. It's huge.
With these lenses, I think the whole getting them rehoused and all that sort of thing, you open yourself up to just not have to think about them as much. I'm very lucky in the sense that we haven't had a lot go wrong in sense of glass on set. Our kit doesn't seem to always go down. I've had like the odd light die and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, a lot of that just comes with, you've got to take care of your stuff, and especially these lenses, just be careful with them, but also love them, and love them like a child, like you would your camera. Treat them with the same respect as that, but also make sure you use them, because if you don't use them and they're just sat on a shelf, then like, what's the point? You're kind of missing out on that kind of way.
Yeah, so getting them rehoused is actually it's a way to take care of them, honestly, because it's protecting them. And like you said, you had little wear marks. I do too on mine. I took mine to Japan, and I got back and realized, okay, well, some of the plastic is starting to chip, but like you said, I don't think it's going to affect the focus gear's ability to grab the teeth. All it's going to take is just some paint. So imagine that you were on set and you had, say, just a remodded lens. So you have parts, right? You have, the lens mount was replaced. You put a focus gear on here. You put an outer diameter ring on here. Why spend the money, just a little bit extra money, to get the rehousing? What's the benefit of getting a full sleeve done on your lenses?
So it comes down to, I think, trust and reliability. So when you just do the basic kind of like modding, so you put the cine ring on, you adapt the back adapter, you put a thing on the front to like bring your outer diameter and inner diameter up. So you can put like an ND filter on or a matte box. The first main thing, so there's several different steps that can be spoken of here. You've basically got so if we go from front to back, when you put an outer diameter adapter on and then put a matte box on the top, that's a lot of weight that's hanging off the front of the lens itself. And I've got a set of Zeiss Jenners that I've not got rehoused yet, but would like to at some point. And if I put a matte box on that, the whole actual lens element moves down slightly, so it can't go to infinity focus. So it's always slightly off, or I've got to like hold the matte box up slightly so I can actually get focus. And obviously that's not very healthy for the lens because everything's moving in a weird angle. So that's your first bit. So you've got to be very careful, or just like not put a lot of weight on the front of said lens. Next bit is the cine gears. If you've not got ones that have been screwed in, they can end up slipping. And I've had a lot where a few years ago I was working as a focus puller, and we'd go and put on, it was a set of Canon vintage like FDs, lovely lenses. Shout out to Ash if he's watching this, he might do. Love the lenses, but those gears used to slip ridiculously, and they just go and shoot back and forth. So I'd go and calibrate the focus motor, and then it would just slip as it gets to the end at the hard stop. So you'd have to run in as the focus puller, hold when it gets to infinity, hold when it gets to close. And like that's a lot of back and forth work, especially when you've got to leave the monitor, run to camera, do it, and obviously with time, when things are time constrained, you've not got a lot of time to be doing.
You don't have time for that.
Stuff. Yeah,
no.
You just want to put the lens on, set the motor on, get it to calibrate, run back to the monitor, good to go, everything's good, everything's working. But a lot of time we're having to deal with these things that are just slipping all the time. So if you are going to go that way, then get it screwed in. That would be my first port of call anyway. And then the final thing is, so the adapters that can go onto the back of the lenses, so kind of like these sorts of things. This one is basically screwed in to the back, so it's actually physically screwed into the NIKKOR adapter. So it's a NIKKOR F adapter to EF, but it's physically screwed into the lens itself. So that's not going to move. But I've had ones where I've put an M42 screw adapter onto like a 58mm Helios, and then taken it off the lens, but then it's completely unscrewed, and then the adapter's gone flying off. I'm left with an M42 mounted lens I can't put on anything now because the only cameras that would take that are proper vintage film ones. So that would be the final thing, it's just basically reliability. You obviously are paying these aren't pricey to kind of like rehouse the lens in kind of like the cost wise. So you're paying to basically just make it reliable, make it work, sort all of those like little finicky things out that you don't really want to deal with anymore. And it gives you that kind of luxury and space to be able to go, okay, I can treat them like proper cinema lenses. I just need to be a bit more fragile with them. Just because if you do go and chuck, like, I've never seen people throw lenses around unless you got those videos where the cameras fall off the back of a gimbal on like a car or something, or on a crane. But normally that's a lot, like a massive duty of care that's just been missed by somebody. But yeah, as long as you're careful with them, you let people who you trust use them, they're going to be absolutely fine and just give you that reliability that you do need. Because as I said, everything in a lens that you've just like cine modded can go wrong, or can go wrong in some sort of way where it's just not quite like right for on-set use.
I don't know if you listen to Wandering GP, but he says that as a cinematographer, you're a problem solver. And you want to create as little friction between the director's vision and the project to make it actually happen. You're kind of the hands on the field. You're the feet of the project. And so even as a first AC, if you're on, even with your friends, this still applies, but if you're on a bigger set, if you're on set and the director is constantly having to wait on you to re-engage with the lens, you can't pull focus or something's off, they'll probably remember that. They'll probably remember, oh, this was the guy who slowed us down on set. And man, nobody wants to be that guy on set, especially if you were the guy who said, hey, let's try out these Nikon NIKKOR like modded lenses. And, you know, it's just everything's going to, it's not going well. We'll just put it that way. So even from just a logistical standpoint, you having what you're saying, Sam, reliability on set, being able to go confidently on set and to trust that your kit is not going to fail is invaluable and might actually get you the next job. So I think it goes beyond just it looks really cool. I mean, functionally, I don't know if there's a price tag on that kind of reliability and trust, like you're saying, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to justify. It's the trust and reliability side that you just can't, you can't cheap out on, and you can't try and avoid, because there will be a downfall at some point. And end of the day, most people in this industry know each other. So you want to make sure that you were that guy that brought on his lenses that looked amazing and did an amazing job, and everything was fine. Everything was great. And that's always the best.
It truly is. So I only have one lens, but you have the opportunity to have multiple. Tell me, do the gears line up? So say you have your focus pull module, your nucleus M, or whatever you're using on the rails in your camera. Do you have to move it and shift it every time, or can you simply just pull it back and then reattach it?
So for the 35 and 50, they're completely lined up. For the 24, it's slightly shorter, but yeah, they sit slightly higher on the thing. So you only have to move the gear back by, I don't know, less than half a centimeter back on your rail. So it's not too crazy. And to be fair, most of the time we're on the 35 and 50 anyway, and then the 24 comes out as like a special guest occurrence. So I always like starting wide and then going in, because it kind of gets the wide over and done with per se. And then you can start moving lights about and getting a bit more experimentative. So it's never caused an issue for me. I don't think it will, just because it's so narrow, and the focus puller will be there on the camera anyway, moving and lining everything up. So they'll be able to get it sorted in seconds. So if it's a half a second where they just need to move it back slightly, it's absolutely fine. But yeah, the other ones, 35 and 50, line up absolutely fine.
And part of the reason cinema lenses are so expensive is because all of the gears at every focal length are lined up perfectly. So all you have to do, say you have your camera, you've got your little focus module on here. All you have to do is pull this back and then reattach it, saving you, at the end of the day, seconds. But over the course of a feature or a full length documentary, you're saving a lot of time with that. So with these, I mean, the fact that it's close is really sweet. Say I have just the regular unmodded lenses, the focus gears are going to be kind of all over the place, and they're going to be different shapes and sizes, as well as you probably get different parts, or you might buy them on eBay. So simplicity, saving time, key features to the CineHousing lens mod. So Sam, how would you improve upon the design? We've kind of sung the praises of the lens mod, but tell me, how would you improve on it?
So the one improvement which has now been done, so I've kind of like been, I was like, when I bought them, I had I believe you've got the plastic rings as well, but they've now got metal focus rings. So that would be the only part where I'd be like, that needs to be improved. That would be my final bit, because the rest of it is stunning. I think past that, it might be to actually physically drill into the lens, but then it takes it away from being able to get the lens back out. But that would be the final bit, is if you just drill into the lens, then it just makes sure that everything is locked in and it's all nice and tight. But it's already completely solid and locked in as is. But yeah, just metal rings, and then the full kind of like thing where it is actually just the focus gear is drilled into the focus ring and the lens itself, and same with the aperture. But that's a lot of work, and that's kind of like where the more premium price tag comes from. But for the money that you've got, can't complain. But yeah, I think metal rings would be ideal, which are now available, I believe. So everybody who orders them now can have that option.
Yeah. Anything else you'd add?
Literally nothing else. I could not be.
That's really great.
More.
That's pretty awesome.
It's weird, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say for mine is, if you can see this on camera, but this outer ring right here. So I have this metal attachment on the end, which is great. It's not going to wear and tear like the plastic will. The only issue is this part has become loose, and so all I need to do is reattach it here and kind of pull up and it locks on there. So that would be my only gripe. It doesn't affect the performance of the lens. But if this was, and I could honestly just do this, if I could like glue this onto the outer ring, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, I think for that, just get some plastic seal or something.
I think the second thing would be, I sent mine in from eBay. I think I shipped it from eBay to Mihai's department, and I did not declick the lens myself. And so now I have a clicked aperture inside of the housing, and I have yet to look at the instructions to actually take it off and to declick it and then reattach all of these things. But Mihai is really, really kind, and I reached out to him to ask how to do it, and he sent me some instructions, and yeah, it can be done. There's simply some holes here, and it's just pulling pieces off and then aligning other pieces, and there you go. You've got like a plastic shield, plastic and now metal shield on your lenses to kind of protect them.
Yeah, so I can 100% recommend CineHousing, because I think it changes how you use a lens, how you utilize it. It changes the trustworthiness. It goes from, I can use this as like a hobby lens, like if I like just shooting a personal project, going, okay, right, I can actually take this onto a proper set. Most people will just think that's just a cine lens and never think anything of it. They won't think that actually, there's been a lot that's gone into it. So it's a nice little trick. Looks cool to impress people, but most importantly, it's something you can trust.
True.
And I can fully recommend it to anybody. And like, you can come talk to myself as well. I'm more than happy to talk about lenses and anything film related. But yeah, I can speak about it all continuously for days if people wanted me to.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the fact that you can customize it too to make it look the way you want it, like yellow plastic, white plastic. You can just change the color how you want. So if you want a set of green lenses, you can do that. Pretty cool, I'll be honest. So yeah, what's next on your list to rehouse? It sounds like you have the Zeiss Jennas. What would be next for you?
Yeah, so I think up next would be the Zeiss Jennas. I really want to see them in a more usable state, because the issue is now they're really small lenses, but they've got beautiful crisp glass. There's a lot of character in them, but I just don't touch them because they are just so small and a bit more fragile, like way more fragile than the NIKKORs are without the housing on. So it'd be nice to put them in something that is just a bit more secure and that you can use. I would also like to get a full set of Russian lenses, so the Helios and like the Mer 1, I think it's the Mer 1V 37mm, all of those rehoused. So then I've got kind of like another set of very characterful lenses. We used a set modded by CineHousing on a short for one of my mates back in April. So we took them all the way up to Scotland and shot with them, and they were just incredible to film on.
Wow.
But yeah, just look amazing. So I probably end up going down that route, but I kind of want to see how far kind of like CineHousing goes, and then go, okay, right, I want to try and get it at like the optimum time now, because I don't want to miss out on like the metal gears or whatnot. So yeah, or I might just be like, you know what, here's my set, just go for it, go the full whack, see what you can do. And just leave them with them, because like I've got my NIKKORs now, and that's like they're my main go-tos. But yeah, I could just leave a set and see what comes out the other end, because I'm sure it'll be incredible. So yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I love that. It's like the Jupiter or the Myrrh, and those are super, really, really awesome looking lenses. I think if I were to rehouse, I'd probably finish the AI-S set. I already have the 85-1.4. I have a 20 millimeter. I've got the 28 2.8 AI, not AI-S. So I don't have the full set of AI-S lenses, but my goal is to buy all of the ones that have the widest aperture, like the best performing ones, if you will. And that would be the day to send them all back in and get like my company logo on them and all of that stuff. That's just really exciting stuff, I have to be honest. So how's the pricing? You know, we've talked about the benefits of this. How does the pricing compare to, say, sending this off to a competitor, right? Who's going to probably cost, a couple $1,000s. What kind of prices are we talking?
Yeah, so it's anywhere from, I believe it's about £350 now. So I think that's about $400 on your end. yeah, price wise, yes, don't get me wrong, you could get like a budget Samyang's like cine lens. I say in inverted commas because they're kind of like they're more stills lenses. They aren't as trustworthy, not as like continuous, and you don't have kind of like that personal twist to them. But for if you took like your NIKKOR lens that you've bought for anywhere between 50 to 150, 200 pounds, because obviously they do depend on price tags and all that sort of stuff, or even your Helios, which you bought for 30, 50 quid, send them in for 350 pounds, you get back a fully rehoused version of it. It's still the same lens for less than a brand new cine lens, which they cost upwards of the cheap ones like the Zine lenses. I think that would be the bog standard like cheap area. They're anywhere from £1,200 to £1,500 per lens. So for a full set, you're talking about 4.5 grand. Whereas you could buy a full set of NIKKOR primes or the more Russian Soviet era lenses for less than £500, and then rehouse them for another £900,000, and then have a full set of cine lenses for £1,500, opposed to paying 5 grand all in for brand new ones. And these ones have all the quality, all the like the optical clarity you want, but also they're. I think rehousing vintage lenses is because you find these lenses to tell and have the character that you want as a filmmaker. And I think that's where it becomes important, is that they then allow you to actually be able to use them properly. So it takes away the nuances and the tricky little bits of owning vintage lenses and just makes it easy for you. And I think for me as well, it's meant that I know I have a set of lenses that will get the exact look I want and will work on any job in a box that I can just grab and go whenever I want to, and I can trust them and all that sort of thing. So I think price wise, I'd pay that any day. I'd probably pay like 50% more if I had to. Like, please don't up the prices. But yeah,
exactly. Big parentheses. We love you, Mihai. Please don't increase the prices. Yeah.
Like, price wise, it's incredible. Spot on.
If you're a younger filmmaker, if you're just starting out, if you're just trying to figure out your style, go to your vintage camera store, pick up a couple lenses, try them out. If you don't like them, return them, and kind of rinse and repeat. Honestly, find the lenses that you love and you just can't go on a set without. And then I would highly, highly recommend considering CineHousing to kind of upgrade them, take care of them, and set them up for success. Not only that, you're setting yourself up for success at that point. So I think for those in the US, the price is about $380 as of a couple months ago. I'm not sure if he's increased his prices. I hope not. But all I have to say, I think the value that you're getting for that, it's pretty invaluable. Like you said, Sam, real quick, reliability, speed, and you're able to save money. They say it can't be good, fast, and cheap. Maybe it's not fast. That's probably the one that's not. But
the triangle of good, fast, and cheap. You have got good and cheap, but you have not got fast. Like for my free, it was I'd sent them off end of September, and they came back to me end of November, mid to end of November. So it was so you've got to wait, but it's worth the wait at the end of the day. So
that concludes the bulk of the conversation. Sam, thanks so much for joining us. Based on the topics that we've talked about, I feel like there's a lot more conversations we could have about like what it means to be, a solo filmmaker, what it means to be a DP, like how do people get on set and all that. I think there's, I'd love to have you on again, but how can people find out, like your socials? How can people find your work, find your profile in your portfolio?
Yeah, so Instagram is Sam Ebdon Film, and then you can find me on YouTube as well if you just either search Sam Ebdon or Ebdon Film. So Ebdon Film is where all my short films live, and then Sam Ebdon is like my personal channel. So I do a couple of like different tutorial bits here and there. I'm really bad at uploading, so yeah, that's just me. Sometimes I'll
You're
go
a creative person.
I'll go and I'll spend a whole day doing like a bulk load of content and then have that going out every day, weekly. But yeah, it's always a hit and miss, and sometimes obviously life gets busy, but I'm always free for a conversation, and just send me a message if you've ever got any questions or just want to talk about film. I'm always there. I love it. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you guys are in the UK and you need a really solid DP on your set, don't be afraid to reach out to Sam. I'm sure he'd hook you up with a lot of care. I think that's something that makes you stand out as a filmmaker, is you really care. So again, thanks so much for joining me on this conversation. I hope you guys found this valuable, and reach out to us if you have any questions. Reach out to CineHousing, consider getting your lens redone, and yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. If you've watched this far in the video, 2 things. 1, thank you so much. And 2, I'm specifically talking to you because there's a really good chance that you want to learn about this stuff. So if you're still here, I want to hear directly from you, okay? So if you have a set of vintage lenses that you have started collecting and you're kind of hiding out on, let me know in the comments what those are, because I'm sure you could help a lot of filmmakers that way. So I'm curious, because I'm sure there's a ton of sets that I don't even know about. So I'd love to learn about those and what you're using and what you think about them too. And honestly, it could help a lot of people. So let's talk about it. One last time, if you want to get your lenses rehoused, don't be afraid to reach out to CineHousing on Instagram. He's so friendly. He can do custom things as well, probably things that he hasn't even done yet. You know, he'll hook you up. So let me know if you actually reach out to him. And until next time, I'll see you around.